true that Russia was behind the attempt to get into the White House computer system? And do you know if the hackers were going after something specific, or was that intrusion sort of a fishing expedition?
Well, what I can tell you, Darlene, is that the White House has detected some activity of concern on the White House network. There is an ongoing effort to evaluate that activity and to mitigate the risk associated with that activity. In the context of those efforts, the administration is continuing to learn all we can about where those activities originated and what sort of methods are associated with those activities. It would be unwise, I think, for rather obvious reasons, for me to discuss from here what we have learned so far. So what I can tell you as a general matter, though, is something that will not be particularly surprising to you. There are many people around the world who would love to gain greater insight into the activities of the United States government by collecting information from the White House network. That is why our network is subject to daily cyber attacks, or at least efforts to infiltrate it. And that means the White House and the government components that are responsible for cybersecurity are ever vigilant in terms of assessing and reassessing and updating the security posture around the White House network. And we take these kinds of activities very seriously. And while we have been aware of these activities for some time, it has not affected the ability, aside from some inconveniences, it has not affected the ability of White House staffers and others who use the White House network to carry out the important work that's done here on a daily basis.
Computer network intrusion, are you saying that the White House does not know who is behind it?
I'm saying that it would be unwise for me to discuss right now what exactly that we know. And the reason for that is simply that we have taken steps to evaluate this activity of concern and to mitigate the risk associated with that activity. Our efforts are ongoing, and by publicly revealing what we know, it might affect our ability to learn more.
It's pretty widely known, though, that the Russians have been pretty prolific in terms of hacking in recent months. It's a major concern up on Capitol Hill among members of the intelligence community. They've talked about it. Does the White House share that view about Russian hackers, that not specifically talking about this case, but that they have been wreaking a lot of havoc in networks, in government networks in the United States and among U.S. allies?
Jim, what I would say about that is that there are a number of nations and organizations around the globe that are engaged in efforts to collect information about U.S. government activity. And it's not a surprise. We're certainly aware of the fact that those individuals or organizations or even countries might view the White House computer network as a valuable source of information. And that is why we remain vigilant about ensuring that network is protected. We're constantly evaluating the security posture, updating it, and tweaking it where necessary to ensure the
shut down here. People were able to use. I know that the White House said last night that there was no damage done to the network, but did it harm the ability of people in this administration to do critical, important work of the U.S. government for a period of time?
There were some steps that were taken to that did have an impact on day-to-day activities at the White House, but I would describe those impacts more as an inconvenience than anything else. And those steps were taken specifically to respond to this activity of concern and to further our efforts to evaluate that activity and to mitigate the risk associated with that activity. The inconvenience that I described was not the result of this activity of concern, but rather was a response to it.